Alright, hey guys, welcome back. And I left off and I had a problem there, and it was a simple problem. I wish I didn't close and stop the video, so I figured since I stopped it, I'd just go on to part 2 already. But all I had to do was change the data value here. It was being utilized, so I had 3001, I went to 3002. So actually, as I stopped the video, I looked and I noticed it right away. So let's pick up, and we'll pick up where I left off and kind of recap just in case you guys had problems on the last video. So in your public pre-initialization event here, this is your code. Make sure you have a unique identifier. Like I didn't, I forgot to change that. Everything in here, should be right. And then when we go down below, the client proxy code, which is here, which would go in your client proxy if you have one set up, and all this should be good. And just have to import these two. I'm not sure if we did that in the last video. I had some problems editing the video and forgot to record, so I'm not sure if I did any changes, but that's you should be set up and ready to go. So let's test this out. I'll run the client, and yeah, your proxy file is listed down here. What to do there. So once you get a client proxy set up, you can add that code over. Okay, so let's test this out. And I already loaded it up, so we should have it ready. Yes, we do. So if we look, I hate clicking on this. I do this all the time. I scroll down, and if I don't go to the side, I always hit survival inventory. It's one of my little pet peeves, having that right there under there. Just automatically clicks to it. Anyways, here's our first model. And I got it right there. And as you can see, it's rendering in hand off of block 1. And when I place it, there's our model. So your model might be looking really funky right now. It might not be rendering all the way, and that's perfectly fine because we don't have the actual texture for the model. Because we're going to implement our own right now. So if your texture isn't covering it all, that's because your texture isn't the size to cover it all. So you have to have a bigger texture. Okay, so in hand it's rendering from block 1 as well as block 1's texture I am utilizing for the actual rendering of the block itself. So in here, once again, you're having rendering problems, just make a texture, call it whatever you want, block 1, and then copy it over into items as well, call it the same thing. I believe one is grabbing it from here, and the other one is utilizing it from in here. We both might be utilizing it from the same place, but either way, we're going to make our own textures right now. So we're going to figure all that out, so don't worry if your block isn't rendering properly right now. As long as you're placing it and all that's good, we can move on to the next spot. So let's go ahead and type in Techne on the internet. And actually, it's Techne. I spelled my package name wrong, so Techne. And here it is, techne.zeus.me. So you're going to have to get the program so we can make our own models. So go ahead and download Techne right here. Download it and install it. I am going to launch up Techne right now. And somebody made some type of mod here. So when you launch it, let me close off this site. So when you launch it, because there was just save on resources, there was a Flash or Java or something that was running there. Okay, so when you load up Techne, you're going to get a texture width and a texture height. Now this is dependent on your model size, just like what we just went through. So for example, a 16 by 16 texture isn't going to cover, a big model, for example. So I'm going to make mine 64 by 128 because I'm going to make something that's similar to that what we just seen, but I'm just going to make something really simple for this tutorial sake. Call it TTT, just whatever, call it whatever you want and create it. So if you're going to make something go 64 by 64, depending on how big you're going to make it, don't go crazy making your first model, just get the hang of this. So let's create this 64 by 128 I'm going to use, and hit create, and I'll walk you guys through a little bit. This is a very simple program, not much to go through, so not much to learn here. If I hold down right click, that'll pan around. If I hold down middle mouse button, that will actually move me around. So those are your two controls. That's all you really have to do. So we can get started and we can create our first cube. That's all we have to create is cubes. There's no polygons or anything else. So create the cube, select it, and automatically create it. We could adjust the dimensions here. So I'm going to do this quickly. You can create your own 16 pixels is a block in Minecraft. I'm going to make mine 16 by 64, which is, I believe, 4 blocks or 3 blocks by 16 again. So I'm going to have it like 1 block. It's going to represent like 1 block by 3 or 4 blocks high. This piece of wood here isn't part of your model. Excuse me. It's a visualization of where your model is placed. So for example, if I rendered out this model right now, that wouldn't be a good thing. Where your positioning of your model is on this pillar also matters as well. So if you position it off to the side, when you go to actually place your block, it's gonna position it off to the side as well. So everything has to be lined up perfectly to this block. So I am going to go ahead and line this up to the block so that my model positions properly. And -40. You can play around. So you can use the arrows, move it down, move it up. So if you kind of scroll down here and look, you can see. So if I rendered my model out right now, for example, my block would be sitting above in the air when I placed it in Minecraft, so that wouldn't be good. I want it to sit right on the floor, and I want it to be centered around the actual model. So keep that in mind as you're building yours. Okay, and that is good for this. Let's look into texturing a little bit here. At the top right, this is representing our textures. And if I create another block here, I'll just do this for tutorial's sake. This isn't going to actually be in my model. Let me just move this over a little bit. And let me make it a little bit bigger, just so you can see. Watch the top right screen here. I'm going to make it bigger, and you'll see the texture gets bigger. So this is actually overlapping this. So this isn't good. So we got to, if you're modeling, you got a whole bunch of cubes, and, you're making something, you're going to want to make sure your textures aren't overlapping. So go over here to texture offset and bring this down, for example. And once it's off, there we go. So now it won't be overlapping your textures. It won't be overlapping. So as you can see, they represent colors and sides. It doesn't really work perfectly all the time, and there's kind of bugs in the program. But so for example, left would represent a left side, front would represent a front. But I'm going to give you a better visualization of this. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this because I don't need this in my model. So let's look at this. Let's go to File. We'll export it as texture map. So we're going to get the texture map by doing this. And I'm just going to name it That's fine. TTT key. I'll replace it, and then I'll actually load it back in. Why didn't it grab it? Okay, don't grab it. I'll load it, open it. There we go. So you could see now how everything is representing on my block here. Pretty easy to understand, right? So if we, for example, went into loaded this up into a paint program here. Let's go with open with paint.net, for example. And we'll wait a million years for paint.net to open. Okay, as you can see, our textures are here. So, you can color, the left side, whatever you want to do, your front, whatever you want to do, your right, your back. You'd have to, do erasing and do some painting here, coloring and stuff. I'm not going to get into, designing colors. This is fine for me, fine for this tutorial. You guys can do that. Play around. You'll figure it out. Pretty much common sense once you see it in here. You play with the colors and stuff. I'm sure you get the idea. You don't need to save that, so that's fine. So I exported this texture. I'm going to use this texture. You might want to make your own within paint.net and then export that, and that's cool. And then you could, load it back into your model. I keep on hitting different tabs, see what it looks like on your model first. Once you're happy with all that, what we're going to want to do, and you got your model and your texture all set up. You might be having texture problems, for example. You might have made something and it's missing half of your texture on here, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Well, that's because you didn't set your texture texture width and texture height properly to the size of your model. So, go ahead and reset that. So once you're all happy, you got everything set up, file, we'll export this as Java. And this is fine, I'll just export it to the desktop. And we don't need this anymore. And close this off. We'll grab our file we created here. And we'll put this into our source. We already have a path in there. Resources, assets, textures, and I'll paste one into models because we'll change the path into models or to model. But for right now, it's utilizing this path right here. So just in case I forget to change it, it'll grab it from here. Okay, so we got our path in there, or we got our texture in. We don't have the model in yet, so now we're going to get the model in, and we'll grab the code that we just created, which was called right here, ttt.java, or whatever you named yours. So open that, right click, open with WordPad or whatever, and then copy everything that's in here. This is the code for your model, so copy all this. You don't need the top. Go back in, locate your model, which we don't need all this, but this is fine. So locate your traffic light model class, extends base, model base. That's how you'll know you got the right class, just in case you named something differently. And we'll rewrite all this. Except for the imports. We can leave the imports up there on the package. We don't have to overwrite that. Okay, so we're gonna have to do some things here. First of all, we don't need this import. If you do have this import, just change it to import your correct thing, but just delete that. Get rid of that. Alrighty, I'm just gonna put that over there. Okay, one thing I should have done actually before I pasted this in is because we can't not change the class name. Otherwise we're going to have issues. So let's traffic light model, that's what it was called, right? So we got to actually put that back. I forgot about this, guys. So traffic light model. So we got to stick with this class name. That's the only thing. You can change all this up, but your class name has to have the same name as over here as well. So let's see, we're gonna have some things that we have to do in here. It's not as simple as copying and pasting. There's just little things that we have to do. So if you just scroll all the way down to the bottom of your class is going to look a little different depending on your model and how you made it. In the bottom here, we are going to have to set up an entity. So, if you actually look at the instructions on it, where is it? It'll show you. So here, add an entity. Guy has a comment. Add entity here, add an entity here, and then add entity here. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And I think that's all we need to do. Where's my code? So here, entity, and then int it. They spelled int it wrong here. And then we need one here. And then it brings it up to here, and I think we just need one here. And I think that's it. So we have to add 1, 2, 3, 4 entities altogether. Let's Control S this, save this. Okay, so now our model should work. Let's check it out. Run client. Cross your fingers. Cross your fingers as you run the client, hoping everything works perfectly, guys. Okay. Place selected world here. Alright, and let's see. We place it down, and it is grabbing the wrong one because I forgot to actually change it. So my model is in the game, so that's awesome. Your model is in the game too. You probably forgot to change the texture too because we didn't even do that. There it is. So the model's in. Let's change the texture of the model itself. I added key here, so we don't need this class anymore. I'm gonna close this class off. And let me take a look. Maybe it was in here. Added fix. I'll find this if it's in here, right here. So resource, location textures, whatever you named it. It's in blocks. You want to change the path and make it utilize model. Go ahead. What did I name mine? TTT. And I'll change my path to model because I have a folder called model in there. So TTT, but I actually have it right here, model. So I have my models in here, separate from my blocks, just to make things, I guess, a little bit more neater. It doesn't really matter. So now it will grab the model. Our item in hand, though, will still be utilizing that other model because we have to actually make a texture, for our model. But let's go ahead and run it. Or an icon, I should say. You have to actually make an icon that will represent your model. Now there is ways that you can render that model in your hand as an icon, but for this tutorial and everything, I think this will be good. So there we go. Model is in the game. You could could have textured it differently, but there it is. It is working. There it is in all its glory of red, blue, and green. Hope you guys did something a little better. So go ahead, make yourself an icon or whatever that would represent your model. And it, like I said, it works just like Tripwire, Hook, or all these other items here. It's simply an icon that's representing the model. Alright guys, I think this wraps up this video. Make sure you hit the like button on all my tutorials, because I probably won't end up making more unless you guys go ahead and like them. Peace out.